Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and investors. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where we talk about the world of scrapping and recycling from a little bit different perspective, focusing on things like precious metals, industrial metals, the stocks of companies that are in the orbit of scrapping and recycling, and just some interesting little hints and tricks and things like safety and business practices. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to having a fun hour talking with everybody, sharing insights and learning. Welcome, Scrapping Irish. See you scrapping. JR Cat. It is great to have y'all here. JR Cat just got done doing the lawn and is starting to cool off a little bit. Man, I hear you. I did the lawn yesterday. It's been a little bit challenging. We've had so much rain here that trying to find a time frame when the grass gets to dry out and you can get the lawn cut before the storm kicks in. It's been an interesting challenge, but I got it done yesterday, so we're good for another week. And of course, with the heat and the rain here in Florida, the grass grows like crazy, so you got to cut it every week or it just becomes a jungle out there. I hope everybody's doing real good and that you've had a good week. I'm really looking forward to having some fun here during our next hour, and then following up on Scrapping Irish's channel after we wrap up here. Don't forget, if you have your auto enabled, you will be automatically redirected over to Scrapping Irish's live stream when we get done here about an hour from now. Chris Boardsword, great to have you here. That's amazing that you're here on a Sunday. Usually you're busy doing stuff, having fun, and I'm glad to see that you're got some time to hang out with us today. Great to have you here. All right. Well, without any further ado, it is time to dive into our precious metal discussion today. This should be yes, last week, remember, we did gold. And so I always like to follow up a gold discussion with its counterpart, silver. So here we have the APMEX silver chart. Now, again, I am not being paid by APMEX. I just have used them to buy and sell physical silver and gold in the past. They and Kitco, good companies to do business with. I mean, no drama at all. You know, you order it, you pay for it, it shows up a little while later. So they're just good companies to do business with. At least that has been my experience. And I like the charts that they provide for us. So here is APMEX silver chart, the 24-hour. We see that silver is down just a touch, but that's not a big deal, right? We're talking about weekend trading around the world, not a whole lot to get terribly excited about. So let's look at what's going on in the 3-day, down 0.09%. It might as well just be flat. You know, if you look at where we started here, 22.68, we're at 22.7. There must be 22.72. I went over a little bit further there, 22.72. Might as well just be flat, but you can see that there was a lot of down action going on here, and then it clawed its way back up for the last 3 days. Here's our 1 week, and our 1 week is down 6.93. Now, that's a little bit more concerning when you see silver go down like that. Now, for some people, they would call that concerning. For me, I would call that a buying opportunity, right? I love to buy when silver is down in the low 20s. It's a real good time to stock up on some physical silver. I like to buy rounds and bars from recognized mints. Sunshine Mint is one of my favorites because they have this little security thing on the back where you hold a little piece of polarized plastic up to the back of the bar, and you can actually see that it's a legitimate silver bar from Sunshine Mint. But there's plenty of good mints out there making silver rounds and bars in various sizes. I also usually like to buy in the 1 to 5 ounce, every now and then a 10 ounce round or bar those are reasonable size things to be able to sell pretty easily, either to your local jewelry shops, pawn shops, or back to folks like AppMex and Kitco. So those can move pretty easily, and they're pretty easy to store, right? They're relatively good size. I never understood the idea of buying a 100-ounce bar or something like that. This thing's just too. I mean, it's a brick, right? What are you gonna do with that? Well, I suppose you could use it as an expensive doorstop. All right. Anyway, let's get back to the numbers here. 22.7, good buying opportunity for silver. It's down right now. Let's look at the month, down 1.5. So we're seeing silver start to slide here a little bit. And then for the 3-month, yeah, it's up 6.7. You're probably wondering, well, why did it go down this last month when it was kind of on a longer trajectory to go up? Now, a lot of that goes back to they didn't raise interest rates at the last Fed meeting. People are starting to get a little more comfortable with where the money supply is. So the big investors, institutional types, they're not buying as much gold and silver right now. They're putting their money into cash. They're still kind of hanging on to see what's going on, but they're not as concerned and feel the need to fly into gold and silver for their security. So this trend for silver, it's probably going to stay down in the low 20s for a bit here, would be my expectation. So if you're thinking about buying some silver, I'd say go ahead and start buying some silver. This is a good price to buy at. It's probably going to be here for a little while before it starts climbing. You don't have to rush in, but you could start buying yourself some silver at these numbers. Year to date, we're down a little over 6%. If you look at the full year, we're up about 2%, and you can see there's a lot of gyration going on here as the world economy and the U.S. economy was trying to make sense of coming out of COVID, reopening, the war between Russia and Ukraine. I mean, those kind of things all have a lot of huge influence on what's happening here. So 5-year overall, we see that silver is up. One of the things that I would suggest people be careful of is you will hear people say that things like, silver is a good long-term return. For the last 5 years, it's up 33%, right? Well, you had to put up with 2.5 years of relative flat silver prices, and then it spiked. Then it started coming slowly back down again. So yeah, if you just looked at the 5-year, you would say silver's up. But if you look at what you had to endure in the interim, you want to be a little bit careful just when you hear those kind of terms. Take a look at the charts and ask yourself, are you comfortable that silver might be flat for a while? Let's face it, silver is not one of those things that we're going to see huge appreciation go on here, but it does get up in the 40s and 50s. And so if you take the mindset of buy silver when it's in the low 20s, sell when you're in the high 40s to 50, you probably got a really good thing going on there. That's a good approach to take with silver. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody on what you're doing with your physical silver, physical gold, if you're into that, if anybody has been buying, or if these prices are going to entice you to do some buying here and add to your silver position. All righty. I have a lot of fun talking about silver, because silver is one of those precious metals that most of us can afford. Gold is, if you want to buy an ounce of gold, you got to have a pretty good chunk of money, right? But you can easily buy a couple ounces of silver and slowly build up a nice base of silver. So I really like silver as an investment metal. Let's see, Board Sword is saying, oh yeah, I forgot to mention E-Waste Mike sent me. Yeah, I saw his video, and no, I'm not paying anybody to come here, okay? But I got, you got to admit, right? With endorsements like I got from Mike, man, why don't I have thousands of people showing up here? Oh man, that guy. Ugh. So yeah, I see you all are here, and I don't see Mike. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. At least I didn't see Mike come in yet. Yeah, no, I don't see Mike in yet. So yeah, he's probably still busy messing around with getting ready before the storm comes in out there, blows all his stuff away. All righty. Well, look, the our safety note for the day is one that is particularly near and dear for those of us here in the United States with summer coming on, and we're going to be out there a lot. So I want to encourage everybody to think about your sun safety, sun protection, sun mitigation, if you can. There's risks to being out in the sun too much. I have had skin cancer, a basal cell carcinoma that had to be removed because of many years in the Navy of being out in the sun. And I was fortunate. We caught it early. It wasn't a huge deal. It wasn't a life-threatening or, altering situation. But skin cancers can get very bad. And then there's other things that you can deal with from too much exposure to the sun. So I do encourage that you be very careful with the sun. Another one of the secondary challenges or ailments that I had as a result of too much time in the sun with cataracts, again, spend a lot of time in the Navy aboard ships. Hey, Mike, it's about time you got here. You sent all these people over and then you just show up. What's going on, man? Staring at the sun or out on a bright sunny day and being out on the sea can have a lot of damaging effects to your eyes as well. So you want to be really careful with the sun. Whenever possible, have a hat on, something to cover bald spot, especially those of you that are more bald than I am. But you always want to have a hat on if you can when you're out in the sun. Wear sunscreen on your skin that is exposed if at all possible. Wear sunglasses to protect your eyes. And don't forget, those parts of your body that may stick out, like your nose. It's very common for people to forget that their nose is going to get a lot of sun even when they have a hat on. And you can get a really bad sunburn on your nose. So make sure that you're, putting something on your nose. I always remember the lifeguards when I was growing up at the pool that had the white noses because they would put the zinc oxide all over their nose to protect against the sun. So just be careful with your sun exposure. If you're going to be out in the sun a lot, think about wearing some sort of lightweight long sleeve shirt so that you're reducing the amount of sun that's getting on your arms. If you're not going to wear a long sleeve shirt, they have these shirts now that they actually help you be cooler because they wick away your body sweat faster. It helps you to stay cooler and protect you from the sun. So, but if you can't do that, put some sunscreen on. There's a lot of sunscreens that also have bug repellent now, so you get double protection. So that's something to think about. I try to remember to do that every now and then. I fake myself out. I've had a couple of times when I've gone to do a job and I've thought to myself, I won't be out there that long. It's not a big deal. And then an hour later, I'm sitting there going, geez, what am I doing here? Why don't I have my hat on or something like that? So, it's important to keep that into consideration. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our aluminum discussion, our industrial metal. I hope that those of you that saw the thumbnail for this live stream knew what number 13 was. JR Cat says he always looks like a sunburned raccoon. Yeah, with the goggle things going on there. I hear you, man. And it's funny too, because I remember growing up as a kid. It's like, summertime would come and we had this mindset that in the beginning of the summer, you'd go out and you'd get the worst sunburn you possibly could. And you'd be miserable for a couple of days. But then it was like, okay, now I'm just going to brown for the rest of the summer and I'm not going to keep getting burnt. Man, is that bad for you or what? It's like, oh my God, and then as a dermatologist explained it to me, then it was funny too, because he was so funny. He's like, hey, what part about being a fair-skinned white guy in tropical climates are you not understanding here, man? You got to protect yourself against the sun. So, yeah, sunburn raccoon. All righty. Well, let's get over to our industrial metal, aluminum, number 13. It's really kind of interesting. Aluminum is a really cool metal. It's used for so much stuff, right? Airplanes and machinery and cars and castings, and we see it all the time on computers. But it's everywhere, and you kind of wonder about these prices sometimes. And it's also most abundant element in the crust, but it's hard to get out, right? It's very hard to refine aluminum, and that explains why it took so long for humans to start using aluminum the way we do now. And there's a lot of talk about how the EV future is going to drive even more aluminum consumption, because if you're trying to get more life out of an electric vehicle, more life as in more runtime, longer distances, you want that car to be as lightweight as possible. So anything you can do to reduce the weight in a car is good. And there's a lot of vehicles that are going over to aluminum bodies, both the electric vehicles and standard internal combustion engine cars. I mean, we got pickup trucks now that are aluminum body pickup trucks, right? Whoever thought that was going to happen? But aluminum, really good metal, and a lot of good uses, and we're going to see even more uses. The long range forecasts for the market in aluminum shows that it should grow anywhere from 3 to 6% over the course of the next 10 years. Of course, a lot of that depends on the sources that you're reading. But I think there's sufficient evidence to say that we should expect to see a long-term upward trend in aluminum, but nothing's going to happen real fast. All right, in fact, what we're seeing going on right now is going in the other direction. You look right here, you can see the 24-hour aluminum spot price going down. If we look at the 30-day aluminum price, it dropped off from this spike, and it's had a slow drop, going ever since. 60-day, we had a drop. There was this little spike in May, and then it's back to dropping again. 6 month, we thought we were going to get a little, some climbing here, but overall, it's still just dropping. 1 year aluminum dropping. What's happening, of course, is that there was a lot of aluminum that got stockpiled, and as people have started reopening, but they had some aluminum that they could use. So we're just, we're not seeing anything happening real fast. If we look at the 5 year, kind of a little bit more hopeful, because we're up from where we were 5 years ago. So, back here, we're a little less than $1. Here we're, a little less than $1, but not as much less than $1, right? You can see that here was this nice climb as we were coming out of COVID, but then it starts to fall off here because, we got a lot of aluminum out there. We're just not going to see great prices for aluminum going on. And if you look at the London Metal Exchange warehousing, you can see the story is clear, right? Although there's been this consumption here, you see this drop in the stock levels here for the last 30 days. But if you look at 60 days, that's not that big a drop. All right. I mean, we were putting more inventory in, which should drop prices. Then they burn off a little inventory, and you're saying to yourself, well, Shark, supply and demand, we ought to see prices going up, right? Well, not. If you look at the 6 month, though, you can see that this drop in inventory is just part of a cyclical event here. But overall, what you see is inventory is climbing. So as inventory goes up, prices are going to keep dropping. So here we see in the 1 year London Metal Exchange the warehouse stock levels continue to rise. And you've got this almost sinusoidal pattern going on around that rise, but overall it's just rising here. So as long as the inventories keep rising, we're not going to see the prices do anything but go down. They might hold a little bit, but they're probably not going to be coming up anytime soon. So, and if we look at the 5-year London Metal Exchange, we can very clearly see that the inventories got burned off real quick after the world started opening up, and now they're slowly starting to recover. So with the inventories going up, prices aren't going to be turning around anytime real soon. So what does that mean for us? I would say that the bottom line for those of us that are in the scrap and recycling businesses, keep your aluminum moving. Whatever your routine sale cycle is, weekly, every other week, that kind of thing, just gather it up and sell it, because it's kind of hard to stockpile aluminum because it can take up a lot of space relative to its weight. So you need some real space if you're going to do any kind of trying to stockpile aluminum, waiting for the prices to come up, and the prices aren't going to come up anytime real fast. So it's a little difficult to actually stockpile your aluminum. Now, some people would say, well, we'll melt it down into bars. Bars take up less space, and I can stockpile it that way. But now you have to factor in the cost of your heat source to melt the aluminum. Street Copper, welcome, man. Great to have you here. And it's funny, I'm just talking about melting aluminum into bars, and you're a avid melter of things into bars, so it's great to have you here. Martha Irene, welcome. Great to have you here. And Wannabe Scrapper, I have a family history. I must have missed something here somewhere in that conversation. Hey, so anyway, so what I was talking about was, yeah, there are folks that are out there. They'll say, well, I'm going to take my aluminum and melt it into bars, and then I'm going to stockpile those bars, and that's okay. Just recognize that when you do that, you need to account for how much energy did it take you to melt those bars. How many, a propane tank, how many bars were you able to melt down to get this? How much aluminum were you able to melt down? How many bars did you get? Where are you going to store those bars? Then, how long are you going to wait until you can sell them to get your money back? And are you going to be able to sell them to get your money back? So, don't just rush into melting your aluminum down into bars. I'm not saying don't do it. There's a lot of people that do it. And some of those folks even sell those bars on eBay and make some money off of them. So that's another way that you could probably do it. But I think for the average scrapper, the idea with aluminum is just keep selling it. Just take it in every week, every other week, get your cash flow. It's a good metal to get your cash flow from. And if you can meet your cash flow requirements with the aluminum, then you can keep more of your copper, which has even better potential to get you some better returns sooner. So keep your aluminum moving. That would be my recommendation. Hey, Rafael, great to see you here. Welcome aboard, sir. All right, so what do you all think about aluminum? What's your plans? What are your plans for your aluminum? You're going to keep moving it for your cash flow? You're going to try to hang on to it and stash it up? You're going to try to melt it? What's your plans? Because I'm just going to keep mine moving. That's although I do need to point out there is some aluminum that I'm keeping because at some point I'm going to mess around with doing some casting and pouring. So I am keeping some aluminum aside for that. And the aluminum that I'm keeping is the aluminum wire that I get from my electrician. Some of the insulated aluminum wire that I'm getting from him, really nice, thick, heavy gauge aluminum wire inside of there. And so I'll strip some of that and keep that aside to mess around with when I want to mess around with doing some casting with aluminum. So let's see, English, let's use English. Street Copper saying the only problem that I see with aluminum bars is you take extruded and make it casted. Very good point. Very good point. That because you get paid less for cast than you do for extruded. At least I do. So very good point, Street Copper. Let's see. Roger from CU Scrapping says, got to keep it moving. He's been getting a lot of it here lately. Yep. Board Sort says cash flow. JR Cat says, I'm missing something, JR Cat, with that conversation stream you're having. I missed it somewhere back there a while back. Oh man. Street Copper says aluminum wire is very clean. Yeah, that's why I'm keeping it aside. Because I think when I get around to messing around with doing some casting, that would be a good aluminum for me to use. So, all right. Well, I think we all. It looks like most people are going to keep it moving, unless you like to do casting with it, and then you want to keep some around for that. All right. So our next topic, as we move right along, is to talk about the business note for the day. And this is going to be one of those ones that I can hear it right now. I'm going to say this and people are going to go, no, we don't want to talk about that. Taxes. Yeah, taxes. Listen, if you're in the business of scrapping, and when I mean business, you have a registered company, you have some sort of certification or license, those kind of things. Not a hobby, but a true business. You've got to really pay attention to your material for tax purposes. If you, in most states where they have sales tax, depending upon your state and the classification of the product that you sell, if you sell it to somebody in the state, you are supposed to collect sales tax, and you might have to collect local taxes as well. And then you have to pay those taxes, of course, to the state. At least here in Florida, that's the way that works. I had to apply for a sales and use tax, and I become, I collect sales tax for things that I sell to people here in the state of Florida, and then I pay that sales tax. But here in the state of Florida, if you're selling a product as a good for another company, if I sell my copper to the scrapyard, and that scrapyard is going to turn around and resell that copper, then that's a good, and I don't have to collect sales tax on that product. So I still have to keep track of everything I sell, though, because it is still income. So I have to track my income for income tax purposes. And the way I am structured right now, here in the United States, called an LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, all of my profit and loss flows down to my personal income taxes for my federal income tax returns. So I have to keep track of everything I sell from my income plus everything I spend for my expenses, so that at the end of the year, my tax accountant can tell me how much I'm either owe or I'm going to get paid back. So taxes are one of those necessary evils that you just have to pay attention to. And if you don't pay attention to them, it's going to come bite you in the patootis really bad. Really bad, because here in the United States, the IRS does not mess around. And you may think to yourself, oh, I'm small potatoes, they're not going to pay any attention to me. If they do, and if you get audited, and if you cannot reasonably prove your businesses, your expenses and your sales and things, you could be in a really, really bad way. So pay attention to what you make, your income, and your expenses. Now, it's not that hard. You just have to keep reasonable receipts for these things. Those reasonable receipts could be something that you write on a piece of paper and you keep a copy of it. When I sell things to my local scrapyard and I get these receipts that say how much they paid me for something, excuse me, I scan that and I put it in a folder, and then I've got a spreadsheet. Now, I know some of you might be surprised that I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of all these numbers, but I do have a spreadsheet. So every day, at the end of the day, when I get back here, one of the first things I do is I sit down and I enter all of my sales and expenses for the day into my spreadsheet so that I can keep track of that. And then I make a digital copy of all the receipts and keep those on file. It makes it really easy then, as I get to the, at the end of the year, I can send all those files over to my accountant who can do my taxes for me. So, and I know that some of you are thinking, well, I can't afford an accountant, and I get it. They can be a bit expensive. So you don't have to. You can do your taxes yourself. You just got to take the time to do it, and you may not get all of the right forms and take advantage of all the right deductions and things like that. So that's why I pay an accountant to do it for me, because that's what they spend their life doing, is understanding taxes, right? So they're going to make sure that you get the most back on every penny that you should get back. And this is one of these things where you have to make it clear with your accountant the way you approach taxes. Now, I've told my accountant that I don't ever want to be in a situation where the government could reasonably come get money from me. If there's a question between taking a deduction or not taking the deduction, don't take it, because I would prefer to have paid a little bit more in my taxes rather than have the government come back and hammer me at some point later on. It's just my personal perspective. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking the approach of, I want to take advantage of every possible deduction I can. And if the government comes back later on, I'll deal with that later on. Just understand the pros and the cons of which way you decide to go. And recognize that in a scrapping and recycling business, you're in this weird world of you're buying and selling things that may not be taxed, but depending upon how they're sold, could possibly be taxed. So you really need to pay attention to that. Of course, every state is going to be a little bit different, so you need to understand the laws for the state that you're operating in, if you're in the United States, plus the federal tax laws. And if you're somewhere else in the world, like Scrapping Irish or Rafale, you need to understand the laws of your country and how they approach and handle their taxes, and what you're required to file and not required to file, and what the potential ramifications are. Look, I know no one likes to talk about this subject. Trust me, I don't like talking about this subject. It's never a fun thing to talk about, but you really need to pay attention to it. And you know what? Just because you're a hobbyist, it doesn't mean that you're exempt, because here in the United States, any income you make should be reported on your income tax. So if you're a hobby scrapper and you make, I don't know, 20, 30 bucks selling scrap metal or whatever, you're supposed to report that. Now, you're saying to yourself, yeah, that's not that big a deal. Well, here's the problem. Most scrapyards nowadays are required to provide these kind of receipts, right? That means that they have your identification, and those scrapyards, depending upon, again, the state laws and things like that, may or may not have to provide all of that information to the state or federal tax authorities. So if the state or federal tax authorities really wanted to come in and do an audit on you, they could figure out how much money you were getting from your scrapyard. And, it could be an ugly audit. So, you gotta really think that one over. If you get paid anything in the United States, it is income, and income needs to be reported. So, that's just the black and white answer. There's a lot of gray area in there that you've got to decide what you're comfortable with when it comes to your taxes. Roger C. Scrapping says, I've always wondered why the scrapyards don't give you 1099s. Because they're not really paying you as an employee. And so you wouldn't get that, part-time or, a consultant or something like that. When I've done consulting work for people, I get a 1099 from them. So it's a little bit different when you're just buying and selling the goods. So something to pay attention to. Chris has posted here. Let's take a look at this from Chris. Exemption: sales transacted between a scrap metal dealer and a person whose primary business is to create products that result in bulk quantities of ferrous and non-ferrous metal. So that's a tax exemption, Chris. Is that what you're saying? I'll have to look that one up. And is that state code or federal? 4737.043. Sorry, folks, I'm making a note here on Chris's comment. Let's see, Ohio. Okay, all right. So let's see, Rafael. 50K Danish crowns on his name. Anything about needs to report it? Okay. Yep. Yep. So yeah, that's good. You're welcome, Roger. I appreciate it. Yeah, saves us from 1099 customers. Yeah, because that could be a real problem. Oh, I got you. That you're saying that section allows you to not have to do 1099s. Gotcha. All right. Very cool. Yeah, I need to look and see why here in Florida. Now I've got myself sidetracked on thinking about something. It wasn't my intention to go down that rabbit hole, but that's a good one. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to look into that. So, yeah, folks, that's again, nobody likes to talk about taxes. It is the reality of the world that we live in, that our governments collect taxes that we hope are being used to pay for all the right things. But whether or not they're used for the right things is immaterial. You still have to pay your taxes. And if you don't pay your taxes, well, then, you're taking a risk and you could end up being in serious trouble. So definitely worth paying attention to. So Gaz is asking the question, what if a company registered in a low tax state but operates elsewhere? So Gaz, the general rule of thumb is that the business transaction is taxed in accordance with the laws of the state, county, and city in which the transaction took place. So when I buy or sell something at the shark cage, then I have to apply the tax laws for the state of Florida, for the county and city where I'm at. It's a little bit different when you're doing online goods, sales of goods, and then they get into what they refer to as your nexus of business. And you start getting a little bit complicated really quick when you start talking about your nexus of business. So for instance, right now, if you know how sometimes I find a vintage PC or some sort of old vintage kind of piece of scrap, and I put it up for sale either on eBay or my website or something like that. And let's say somebody from Ohio decides to buy that vintage PC or board or something like that. I do not have to collect state income tax, because even though I'm in the state of Florida, the person buying it is in Ohio. I do not have a nexus of operations in Ohio, so I do not have to collect income tax for that transaction. If I had a shop in Ohio, if I had an extension of my business in Ohio, then I would have to collect sales tax. That's why you see companies like Amazon are collecting sales tax, because they have a nexus of business pretty much in every one of the 50 states. So it gets a little bit complicated with your online transactions, but essentially you get it's the tax that applies at the location where the sale was conducted. I hope that helps. I know it can be a little bit confusing, but hopefully that explained it for you. Scrapping Irish wants to know about taxes on M&Ms. Okay. This is what you get for trying to be a good guy. Let's go back in time a little bit. And I believe it was actually during COVID, and Irish was complaining about not being able to get access to the many varieties of M&Ms that we had here in the United States. So on one of those rare occasions when I was trying to be a good guy, I went out and bought him a bunch of M&Ms, unusual kind of M&Ms that we get here, and I sent them over to him. Now, when I was filling out all of the shipping documents, I had to do the customs thing, and there was an option for me to prepay customs. So I did. Well, then apparently he still had to pay for something when he got them, and plus I had paid a bucket load of money myself. So yeah, I got scammed, and that's why Scrapping Irish is never going to get another M&M from me again for as long as the two of us live. Corey J says he lets eBay decide. Yeah. Folks like eBay, Amazon, they got to figure it out, right? They have a lot of people that's just what they do is figure that out. So that's the way to go there. Gaz, thanks. Just wondering because my businesses are not regulated in the UK, but Haven in Europe. Okay, yeah, got to pay attention. And again, Gaz, that's again, you need to look at it. I'm just telling you what the laws are here in the United States because that's what I know and understand. I can't speak definitively for what goes on in Europe and the United Kingdom. That gets really complicated. Rafael, small chance in Ohio to get sell, but possible. Trying our luck in Michigan. Oh man. Corey J says they only tax the red M&Ms. No, man, these were every color that got sent. I should have, that would have been interesting. Do a tax. What was the per M&M tax that I had to pay? Oh man. Oh geez. All right, so now we know that now everybody understands the story behind the M&M tax that I paid. I wasn't necessarily paying an M&M tax, although it sure felt like it. So yeah, look, whatever you do not ship M&Ms to Ireland because they just really want to tax the hell out of M&Ms. I don't know what it's all about. All right. Well, look, it is time for us to talk about our stocks for the week. And this week's Value Line Investment Survey, again, remember, these folks do not take any advertising. So, and again, I don't get paid by them. But if they ever pay attention to this live stream and want to pay me, I'll be happy to take some money from them. But they take no advertising. So this is all just raw data and their independent analysis of that data. This week had some really interesting industries in it: electrical equipment industry, electronics industry, semiconductor industry, and computer peripherals companies. So going through, it's interesting that there are very, very few of the companies in those industries that meet my very strict threshold of 17 years of increasing cash flow per share, earnings per share, or dividends per share, with a major focus on dividends per share because I am a dividend investor. But there were a couple of companies that made the threshold. This first company, probably not a big surprise to a lot of you. There used to be a saying in business that you can't go wrong if you go blue. So IBM, they've been around for a long time. Some people hate them. Some people love them. Some people love to hate them. But regardless of what you think about IBM as a company, here's the numbers. So right now they're paying 4.9% dividend yield. That's down a little bit. It was a little bit higher, but that's because the price share went up. So, and this is as of the 23rd of June. The per share, what it's going to cost you to buy is $136.42. a little bit on the high side for some folks, but for a good quality company, that's not a bad price. Now we can see that they are not qualified by cash flow or earnings per share. They've had these, they had 5 years of decreasing earnings and cash flow per share. But if we look at their dividend, they're what we call a div zero. So that means they had 0 hits during the 17-year period. In other words, for the last 17 years and actually longer, they have increased their dividends per share every year. So that is a good, solid dividend play. And at 4.9%, that's a very reasonable return on your investment. So this is one of those companies that you can feel good about making the investment in the company and letting it ride for the long haul. Now, it's interesting. I want to read something real quick to you from the analysis that was done here by the folks at Investment Line Survey. They say that shares of IBM are ranked to trail the broader market in the averages in the coming 6 to 12 months. The stock has a dividend yield of 4.9%, which should interest income-seeking subscribers. However, over the 3 to 5 year period, the equity of offers weak price appreciation potential at this recent quotation, which is up modestly since the March report. So in other words, what they're saying here is it's got a good dividend, and as a dividend investor, it's probably still worth it. But if you're looking for to make money when you sell it, you're probably not going to see a lot of gain there. All right, so just keep that in mind. Now, again, I'm a dividend investor. I buy and hold. So IBM is on my list of investments that I might be making here in the not too distant future. Kind of undecided. There's a lot of things that my money needs to go to right now. So I don't know if I'm going to be adding them into the portfolio or not. I do not own them currently. Now, I wanted to compare IBM, which is listed as a computer and peripheral because that's, they make computers and servers and peripherals and those kind of things. I wanted to compare them to one of the companies that is in the semiconductor industry. So we're going over to Texas Instruments. Now, Texas Instruments, their yield is 2.8%. So not quite what we really want to see, right? We want to see something that's in the high threes, preferably 4 plus, because right now you can get 4 to 5% on certificates of deposit and stuff like that, right? There's some things you can do with your cash to get 4 to 5% without the necessary risk of investing in a company. Plus, at $174 a share, that's a pretty expensive stock. But the semiconductor industry is not doing as well as you might think, right? We had a lot. There was a lot of concern during COVID to get semiconductors and chips, and so those people who could stockpiled, and then they started going through their stockpile, and so been driving the prices down. And the companies that were making chips, they kind of ramped up production to meet the demand. So now you've got a lot of production out there, and the demand is, well, really not a whole lot more than what it was before COVID. So there's some pressure on prices right now that are going to impact how much money these guys make. Now, layered on top of that, and this I thought was really interesting. So I'm going to read this because I was really fascinated when I read about this. I think most of you are familiar with what's called Moore's Law. And so this was written specifically on Texas Instrument, but it applies to all of the companies that are in the chip manufacturing business. A potentially more significant problem is the looming cessation of Moore's Law. Moore's Law refers to, I'm having a hard time talking today, refers to an observation made by the former Intel CEO, Gordon Moore, in 1965, who noted that the number of transistors on a chip tends to double every 2 years. Over the past 58 years, Moore's Law has consistently held true. However, it is now running up against the physical reality that because our universe is made of atoms and atoms have size, there's only so small a transistor that can possibly be made. Now, at this point, the end of Moore's law is expected within the next few years, if we haven't already gotten there. What the exact effects of this on the semiconductor industry might be are difficult to gauge. On the one hand, customers will still need chips, even if they aren't advancing in power as quickly. On the other hand, a reduced rate of obsolescence for older products may hurt demand. So specifically for Texas Instruments, as for this stock, it holds limited appeal at the current quotation. Although its stability may appeal to more conservative accounts, it offers poor price appreciation over both the 18-month and 3 to 5 year period. The stock is neutrally ranked for timeliness, meaning it's not going to go anywhere real fast. And it's really not giving you much in the way of a dividend yield. Although they are qualified, if we look across the dividends per share, we can see that they are right now a div 1 because they're forecasted to not increase their dividend yield next year. We'll see how that plays out. These bold numbers that you see here means these books are still in process. They're not finalized, so that could change. I just thought it was fascinating that the people that think about, what affects the investment potential in industries are talking about Moore's law relative to whether or not you want to invest in the companies that make chips, because one of the things that we deal with as scrappers is the notion that because I hear this a lot from people, and that is they will say things like, it's a shame that looks like such a new computer. Maybe somebody could have used that computer. And what's happening is in business, a lot of business folks, the computers that they're using can't keep up with the software that they're using. Hey, Simon, great to see you here, man. So when their hardware can't keep up with their software, they have to upgrade the hardware. And what are they doing? They're upgrading to something that has more processing power, right? The chips. And so what's the potential impact for us as scrappers? Could we potentially see a slowing down of the availability of computers out in the future? Probably not anytime soon. I wouldn't, get panicked and say, oh my God, the e-waste world is ending. But it is something to, tuck away in the back of your head and pay attention to, that, it could possibly start to slow down a little bit. The reason why we get a lot of the computers we get is because they can't keep up with the modern demands that applications and software requirements are forcing on them, and they choke and they slow down. And so people get newer computers that are faster. The old ones still work just fine, just can't keep up with the software that's out there. So I suppose another potential thing is that they change the way they're writing software. It becomes a pretty complicated situation out there, right? So I just found it fascinating that there are folks in the investment world that are actually paying attention to things like how the end of Moore's law could affect what happens with the potential of companies like Texas Instruments to keep moving ahead. So it's not going to stop me from scrapping computers, man. I'm going to keep scrapping them because I just love, scrapping computers. It's just so much fun. So Simon, Texas Instruments will get a piece of government orders for sure. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is going to take a while before we see any impacts to us as scrappers and recyclers in this industry. So yeah, I wouldn't expect anything to happen real soon. And let's face it, you got to keep pushing new hardware. So we're going to keep getting the stuff that gets cast off. Now, does that mean that some of those things may still be more usable in the future? Will there be CPU? Will like right now, BoardSort buys I-series CPUs because they can test them, and if they're still functional, they can sell them to people that are using them to build computers. So that market should persist for quite some time, because at some point you can only fit so much stuff in a chip. There's some goods and bads to that discussion for all of us to pay attention to. So I don't know. What do you all think? Does this give you all any concerns? I hope it doesn't. I'm certainly not concerned. I just thought it was a fascinating discussion. And if you are looking at adding to your stock portfolio, well, if you had to ask me to make a recommendation, I'd say IBM. But you got to remember, I'm not licensed or certified to make any kind of financial recommendations. I am just the shark scrapper that uses a certain way of looking at stocks to make my decisions, and I'm sharing the way I look at stocks with you, so that you can decide if that makes sense for you as well. If you are going to buy any stocks, I do encourage you to do your own due diligence, your own homework. If you have access to a certified financial planner or stock advisor, take advantage of that. I don't. I am my own financial planner, good or bad. That's for Mrs. Shark to decide if that worked out or not. Scrapper Wolf, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. We're going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes and heading over to Scrapping Irish's channel, but it's great to have you here. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody was thinking about buying into the chip market, if you have questions about any of the companies that are out there in the world of semiconductor industry, computer peripherals, let me know. If they have been analyzed by Value Line Investments, I'll be happy to share with you what I can. And of course, if you're one of my Patreon members, you get extra special treatment for that. So certainly my Patreon members, if you have questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to do a special analysis for you, provide you some additional information if that would be helpful, as a way for me to say thank you. For those of you that are wondering about my Patreon members, it's actually a way for folks to help support the donations, the support that we do for shark research, because a portion of all the money that I get from my Patreon patrons goes towards the tags that we are going to help the Shark Research Foundation acquire for tagging great white sharks in this recently discovered hotspot off of Nova Scotia. So I'll have more information for that as well. There's 3 tiers to the Patreon group. So the lower tier, the least expensive, is $5 a month. So it's not that hard to become a member. Everybody gets a video just for patron members. So every Wednesday, the patron members get their own video. And the second tier, the hammerheads, they get, I think the second tier is the hammerheads. Anyway, the second tier, they get to vote on the name of the sharks that we're going to adopt. Because when we tag them, we get to name them. So they'll get to vote on the names for the sharks that we adopt. And then our top tier, the great white shark tier, in addition to everything else, they get to actually submit the names for consideration. So as we get ready to start tagging some great white sharks, they get to submit a name for consideration. Plus, they get a cool little quarterly surprise package of whatever my wife and I can come up with that we think is really cool. So hopefully they've received I've shipped out this quarter's package. So hopefully you got that and you like what you got. I had a lot of fun coming up with that last one. So please make sure to let me know that it got there safe and that you're enjoying it. Martha, you are welcome. It is my pleasure. I love doing this. I have a lot of fun putting these things together, sharing this information with everybody. And I really appreciate that folks are taking the time out of their Sunday to come join all of us as we share and learn from each other. Thanks everybody for your input and your conversation. There was a lot of good information that gets exchanged. I don't always get a chance to comment on everything that comes up on the comments, but for those of you that do share stuff in the comments, thank you very much. It's going to be available in the playback, so folks that want to go back in and take a look at the comments, please go ahead and hit the playback. You'll be able to see all the comments in greater detail and learn a bit. Hey, Roger, okay, I'll check the shipping and make sure what's going on there. I'm surprised they didn't get there yet, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, let me know, because otherwise I'll try to track that down and see what happened to it. All right, everybody, remember, if you have the autoplay enabled, you will be automatically redirected over to Scrapping Irish's live stream as soon as I end this one. If you do not have autoplay enabled, please go look up go look up Scrapping Irish and join us over on his live stream. We'll have a lot more fun over there. He always likes to bring folks up on the panel, and you never know who's going to show up on Scrapping Irish's panel. And if it's Mike, you never know what he's going to say about the rest of us. I'll see you all over there. Have a great week.